The 10 plagues of Egypt were a punishment to the Pharaoh and the Egyptians. This was set on them for punishing the Israelites and proof that the gods of Egypt were powerless. The main characters consisted of Moses, Aaron, and the Pharaoh. The first plague, known as the water to blood plague, was God instructing Moses to dip his staff in the Nile, causing the water to turn into blood, making all the fish die. As a result, the Pharaoh doubled the work of the Israelites. The scientific reasoning behind the first plague was that rising temperatures turned the Nile into a muddy watercourse, spreading fresh toxic water from the burgundy blood algae dye. The second plague, known as the frog plague, was God instructing Aaron to raise his staff over the water, having hordes of frogs come and overrun Egypt. As a result, the Pharaoh granted permission for the Israelites to leave, ending the second plague. The scientific reasoning behind the second plague was that any water that killed the fish could also kill frogs. The third plague, known as the lice plague, was instructions to Aaron to strike the dust with his staff, creating lice eating all the food and wine. The fourth plague, known as the plague of the wild animals, was a swarm of animals that only affected Egyptians, causing the swarm to harm the people and livestock. The scientific reasoning behind the third and fourth plague was the lack of frogs. This caused the insect population to increase massively, and due to the rotting of the frogs and fishes, this attracted flies and lice into the Nile. The fifth plague, known as the livestock disease plague, was an epizootic disease that spread through all of Egypt's livestock, which include cattle, horses, and sheep. The sixth plague, known as the plague of the boils, was a command set by God making Aaron and Moses collect soot and throw it in the Pharaoh's presence. The soot increased a skin disease called sahine, creating boils on Egyptian males and livestock. The scientific reasoning behind the fifth and sixth plague was because of the increase in number of flies and lice, resulting in multiple bites. This created an exchange of disease, creating an epizootic.
The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward heaven so that hail may fall on the whole land of Egypt, on humans and animals and all the plants of the field in the land of Egypt."
The scientific reasoning behind the seventh plague was that a volcano erupted at that time, making it rain fire and rocks. The eighth plague, known as the locust plague, was a plague that contained a swarm of locusts flying from the east when Moses raised his staff into the wind. The swarm consumed every last plant of crops that Egypt had. The ninth plague, known as the plague of darkness, was commanded by God to bring darkness to all of Egypt. In the Bible, the darkness was so heavy that the Egyptians could physically feel it. The plague was placed to attack the Pharaoh's god, Ra, who was the Egyptian god of sun, and to prove the power of the god. The scientific reasoning behind the ninth plague was in theory to be the Hamsun, which is a charge of sand and dust that can produce darkness if strong enough. The 10th plague, known as the death of the firstborn, was the final punishment God set on Egypt. God sent Moses to inform the Israelites to mark lamb's blood on their door to be safe from God's punishment. This punishment was the last to scare the Pharaoh and finally grant freedom to the Israelites.
The 10th plague, known as the death of the firstborn, was the final punishment God set on Egypt. God sent Moses to inform the Israelites to mark lamb's blood on their door to be safe from God's punishment. This punishment was the last to scare the Pharaoh and finally grant freedom to the Israelites.